Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be talking about The Arrival, an excellent film. 2016 film, came out in November 2016. I just recently saw it. Warning, spoilers all over this. So, this film starred Amy Adams as a linguist, and this was a science fiction first contact film, which, like, those are all the things I love. So I love film, I love first contact stories, I like science fiction stories. This was great. Like, now, so I am saying I absolutely love this movie. 5 stars, excellent acting, fantastic film, really dug it. But I also want to give a warning that this movie pushes all my buttons. Like, this movie was just perfect for me. Like, all the things I like are in this movie, right? And I'm also saying that because I love this movie. I really thought it was 5 out of 5 stars, but I also really get why people would not like this movie. It has very slow pacing. It is not an action film. It is not like any other films. It's very unique. There are almost no films like this. The film is almost entirely about language. It involves time travel, right? There are all these wonderful things that I absolutely love that many viewers would just hate, right? Would just really not like. And actually, I don't like slow-paced films, but it really fit this film, right? And this film needed to be told at the pace it was being told. This is a absolutely brilliant movie. So I went to see this, and I really enjoyed it. I had to go see it by myself, and the reason why was no one in my family had even seen the trailer. I had seen the trailer 3 months prior and was looking forward every single day to this movie, and was really excited. And no one I knew even knew about this movie, and so it was really under the radar. Not a whole bunch of people really digging on this film. Really unique property, really special and really unique, right? So, with all that said, I'll get into why I love this movie so much and why I really highly recommend anybody seeing it anywhere at any price. Play full movie ticket price, see it on the big screen. This is a fantastic film. So Amy Adams plays a linguist who is hired by the government, and her handler is a military officer played by Forrest Whitaker. He did a great job. And then last is a scientist who is played by Jeremy Renner, right? And all three of these people, this movie was blessed to have a very small budget. Now, I would guess it probably cost between $25 and $50 million, maybe. And it's one of these movies where a lot of times, like, a perfect example of this is the Transformer films. Those movies, they cost $200, maybe $300 million. There's notes from every executive in the in the company that owns it. Like, there's so many cooks in the kitchen, and it's just jam full of a bunch of junk, right? It's good stuff in there, but there's a whole bunch of not good stuff in there, and they feel weighty, and like they feel like they're trying to carry product promotion, and they're trying to carry a toy, and they're trying to carry things that executives care about. Like, they just, like, you can feel the weight of these films. There's so much freight on them. This movie was just light. It was really light, like, in that whatever a studio handled it, it felt like they let this story evolve from the novelette that it was based on by a brilliant science fiction writer by the name of Ted Chiang. Now, it's interesting that I was, like, so in the bag for this movie. When I saw the trailer 3 months ago, I'm like, I'm in. I need to see this film. I cannot wait. And only after I'd seen the film did I realize it was written by the story was written by Ted Chiang. Not the screenplay, but the story itself is based on a novelette, a short novel by Ted Chiang. And Ted Chiang is a brilliant science fiction writer. He's primarily does a lot of short stories, just a really solid writer. And he really brought it here, like just fantastic. So you have these three. You have the military officer, the linguist, and the scientist. The aliens come to Earth, and they come to Earth with 12 ships, and they dock these 12 ships at different places around the world, and they just float above the ground, and they're there, and then immediately the governments secure the sites where the ships came down. Immediately also, like everybody, this is a great part of the film. They showed what would happen in a real first contact event. If aliens came to Earth, this is what would happen. And they showed how people were very upset, how, it was really a world-changing, excuse me, a world-changing event. And I really loved the way, there were scenes where the linguist talks on the phone with her mother and says, hi, Mom, and kind of has to reassure her and, kind of telling her don't listen to Fox News without saying Fox News. It was, that was one thing I really loved about this film was it was telling a big blockbuster story. Hey, what if aliens came to Earth in a very personal manner, right? So this is the personal story of the linguist and the scientist. We really don't get to see too much of the military officer, and that's okay. Like, he served his purpose. And so the aliens come to Earth, and they immediately set up shop, and they allow entry into their ships, into their spaceships, every 18 hours. And so these teams start going in, and they start interacting with the aliens. Well, the aliens are very smart, and they have set up a screen where they can talk to the humans through this barrier. They can communicate, but they can only communicate in their own language, which humans can't understand, right? So the military officer goes to the linguist, and he recruits her, and he also recruits a scientist so that they can get scientific data from these aliens, right? So basically, at that point, the linguist goes to work, right? And she tries to. First thing she does is she just listens to their language. Well, the aliens are about 15 feet tall, and they are squids, right? So they float in the air like squids, right? And they have tentacles like squids, right? They don't have any human features. The aliens are quite alien, right? And when they make an audible noise, it sounds like a whale, right? And so Amy Adams, right, so the linguist says right out of the gate, I can't communicate in their language, so we're going to need to go visual, right? So she starts teaching the aliens to write, right? And she brings a slate and just writes on the slate, my name is linguist, right? Now I'm a linguist and you are aliens. And they begin communicating visually. Well, the aliens, they are called heptapods, which is based on the amount of legs they have. So it means 7 legs, right? So the linguist starts communicating with the heptapods, and it's tough going. And the military officer keeps telling the linguist, hey, you really need to move forward, right? Now, if it sounds like I'm not really talking about the scientist, this entire movie rested on Amy Adams' shoulders, right? She was the linguist. I would say 80% of this film is all about the linguist. And that's okay. When you see it, you'll see why that is. And it is just, it's really a very different movie. It's really about one person. It's about this linguist. And one of the reasons why is, and I really appreciated this because I work in information technology, and there are times where there are projects where there's a lot of people on the project, but there's only one person who can do that work because it is knowledge work, and you need deep knowledge about these systems in order to put the pieces together and build this thing. So what the linguist is doing is she's doing creation work, right? So when you're creating something, when you're designing something for the first time, you really need knowledge workers involved in that, and you need to be, you need them to be able to do their best work, right? And so she's doing her best work here. She's really trying to be able to get to understand them and for them to understand her, right? And all of this is being done to ask one question. What is, from the humans to the heptapods, what is your purpose on Earth, right? And, you know, and so the movie did a great job of just showing what it's like when, you know, when a whole project, she was the long pole on that project, man. Like, you know, the whole thing rested on her shoulders. So the scientist does not have much to do in the film at all. And it's okay, you know, like, it's hard to explain why there are these extraneous characters, but they needed to be there. So anyway, at that point, you're going into the, you know, so the linguist is continuing to speak with the heptapods, and she finally gets to ask the question, what is your purpose here on Earth? And they say, offer weapon. She gives this to the military officer. Military officer kicks it up the chain to, like, you know, the generals and to literally the president, although we never see the president in the film, which is fine. The military officer represents the hierarchy, represents the establishment, right? And which I really liked, just the tightness of this film. There weren't all these extraneous characters. There weren't people being thrown into film that didn't need to be there. It was just really tight, and I really liked that. And I really mean it when I say this movie was blessed to have a small budget. There are directors who, when they have a small budget, they can really make the most of every dollar, and they're mindful, right? And there are directors, when they have a huge budget, they just spend it like crazy, and I think it rarely makes the film better, unless it goes directly into the special effects. So the linguist gives this message, and then they come back with more questions. They're like, are they offering us a weapon? Do they want us to offer them a weapon? Are they offering to trade weapons? You know, so the movie kind of, and then, you know, so then the Chinese, so all these other governments are doing the same thing, and communication has broken down between the different countries of the world because they don't trust each other with the information from the aliens. So all the different governments are squirreling up. They're not communicating with the other governments, and it's really, really interesting. And the Chinese have gotten to the point where, like, that's it. We're not dealing with these people anymore. They came here. They parked on our land. We're telling them, get out, you know, and we want, and if they don't, we're going to blow them up, right? So, you know, that's, you know, and that's what's happening with this, you know, with those things. And so the linguist realizes that she needs to solve this immediately, right? So she goes back and she talks with the heptapods one more time, and she finally figures out what they're saying. By the way that the heptapods talked, they would take one of their tentacles, and it would, like, splay open on the end, and they would shoot out ink that would make circular forms in the air, and it would dissipate like smoke. It was visually stunning. It was really, really cool special effect. It was really cool the way it looked and the way it, you know, it communicated their alienness. It really communicated the way they were specifically communicating. It was just an elegant solution to this part of the story. I really liked it. The heptapods were awesome. They were just really cool. So the heptapods and the humans are talking, and what she finds out is she figures it out. She figures out what they mean by offer weapon. And what they're saying is, and by the way, the heptapods gave their entire language to the scientist, and the scientist said, you know, kind of translates the whole body of work for, or helps get that accessible to translate for the linguist. And the linguist says, I realize what the weapon is. They are offering us their language so that we will understand their language. Now, I'm going to be the first one to speak their language, right? But she realizes their language is the weapon. And the reason why is the aliens don't see time the way we see it. They don't see it in a linear fashion, experiencing one moment at a time. They experience time as one open, fluid experience. And so they can tell the future and the past and the present all at once, right? And that's how they perceive time. And when they teach their language to the first person on Earth who can understand it, that person will then perceive time in exactly the same way, right? By the way, their communication at some level, it looked like it was like somewhat telepathic, and that they were communicating through dreams, right? But once she understood their language, she would know the future and the past. And this would immediately make her the most deadly weapon on Earth. Because if the U.S. had the ability to tell the future, they could win any war, right? So that was what the creatures meant by is a weapon. Now, this is a callback to something that was said in the film, and the linguist said that. She said, when two new cultures meet, language is the first weapon that is used, right? And that was the point of this film, was that language is a weapon. And it was brilliant. Man, it was just so good. Just a brilliant. This whole film is just a brilliant thought piece, right? And I really, really dug it, and it was fantastic. So, with all that said, what now? She now understands this, right? So what the linguist does, is she immediately commits treason. She gets a cell phone in all this is taking place in the secured military facility that is close to the spaceship, right? She gets a satellite phone and gets on the horn and calls China. And she gets on the horn with the Chinese leader and with the Chinese general specifically, who is the Chinese leader, and says they don't perceive, and she explains it to him. She says, this is how you understand their language. You guys need to understand it because we're going to understand it, and we both need future seers. If we both have future seers, then it really isn't a weapon, because it's actually mad. They didn't say it in the film, but if you were paying attention, it was mutually assured destruction. If they both have future seers, they don't really have the ability to defeat the other person easily, the other country easily. And then what they do is, so she commits treason, and at that point, and calls up the Chinese and says, hey, here's the secret. The Chinese share the secret as well, and all the nations of the earth get the aliens' language all at once. And then the linguist actually goes with U.S. diplomats to China, and everything's great. And there's no war, and there is no... and everyone is able to communicate with the heptapods. I found that to be a very problematic ending, right? Or not a very... it wasn't a great ending. It was a good ending for a film in that I think, as inaccessible as this movie is, that's a fairly accessible ending for a lot of people, right? I feel like if we did have first contact, it would probably end pretty badly, and it wouldn't have the great resolution here. But that's okay. We can tell stories where cool things happen that maybe make us want to strive to have peace and to have understanding. And so I thought that was the purpose of the story. It wasn't 100% realistic, but it was, I would say, 95% realistic. This movie did a great, great job of showing what it would look like if Earth had first contact. It was the best first contact movie I've ever seen, and I really felt that they did a good job of showing how the governments would react, who would be involved, all that stuff, right? And it was just a fascinating film. I really, really enjoyed it, and that is the story of the film. I highly recommend seeing it, and it was really fascinating. There was another part of the film that was in there, and one of them was Amy Adams' character, the linguist. She was married to the scientist she was working with, and that is a twist that is shown at the end of the film. Additionally, the linguist had a child when she was very young actually about 15 years ago, she had a child, and that child dies of cancer when she's 15, right? Well, the reason that we get told all this about the linguist is the linguist has a hard choice to make. Once she understands the future and the past, she can choose whether to have her child or not, right? So she chooses to have a child that she knows is going to die of cancer when she's 15 years old. She also chooses to tell her husband this fact when the child is 5 years old, right? The husband divorces her and leaves her and the child, right? Now, she's fully aware of all this. She knows all this is going to happen, right? And, and so this was saying, I would do it all again. I would make my choices even knowing the pain that it would cause. Perfect. I think that's a great way to handle a time travel story. This movie was just fantastic. Really, really deep. Very unusual film. The pacing is so different than most other films. The tightness is so different than most other films. Really wonderful film. I highly recommend seeing The Arrival. Best first contact movie I have ever seen. And I am very excited to see more Ted Chiang short stories, novels, or novelettes made into film. Take care, everybody.